Hi friends, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about hybrid identity. So in order to understand hybrid identity, we need to understand the on-premises world. So if you see on the diagram, on the left-hand side, you can see all the on-premises components. When I say on-premises, it means your data center, which your company is managing on their own. Okay, so you may have rented out a data center, or your company has created a data center in their own building, and you're managing it on your own. That is your on-premises. So when I say on-premises, you have an identity solution available to you, which is called as Active Directory Domain Services. So this is a on-premises directory services solution, which has been there since 2000, around 2000. So it has been a quite a old product and a tested product. So this was introduced, I think the most popular Active Directory version was 2003. So you have a lot of components that are connected to this directory or on-premises Active Directory. So what are these components? So you can have file shares connected to your on-premises directory. You can have certificate management connected to it. You can have rights management service connected to it. You can have computers, printers, users like organization units. All these are components which are connected to your on-premises Active Directory. Okay. Now, this is on the on-premises side. What you want to do in order to create a hybrid identity, you want to connect the on-premises components with the cloud components. So on the right hand side, you see we have our cloud identity. Cloud identity is nothing but a user which is created in cloud. If I talk about on-premises users, this is an on-premises identity. And when you sync your on-premises users to cloud, this forms a hybrid user. That's what you want to achieve. So if you see on the cloud, you have different services which are connected to cloud. So you have like Microsoft 365, Intune, Windows 11, SaaS applications that you might have created, Dynamics 365. You can also invite some guest accounts who are using Hotmail, Outlook, Gmail, or you can invite some people from other companies that are also part of some Azure AD tenant. So you have all these components on the right hand side. In order for you to facilitate this communication from the left hand side to the right hand side, we use a tool called as AD Connect. So what this tool does, this tool basically synchronizes your users from on-premises to cloud. How does it do it? So basically, you have two connectors which are installed in this tool. This connector is your on-premises connector that's connected to on-premises Active Directory, and the other connector basically connects to your Azure Active Directory. Because of these two connectors, it is able to sync your users and other objects to cloud. So usually the sync is one way like this. But sometimes if you own a premium license, you can also do this reverse sync. So you can do password write back. So whatever passwords are being written over here in Azure AD, those can be written back to on-premises. That can be done. Or you can also have device write back. So if you have some devices, you can also maybe do a sync from cloud to on-premises. But that requires premium licenses, and maybe we can have a separate discussion on it. But you have this synchronization option going on. Now let's say you have a user over here, okay? And that user wants to log into Microsoft 365. Now, if it is a cloud user, so if the user is created over here in Azure Active Directory, they'll be easily able to log in because their password and everything will be stored in Azure Active Directory. So your authentication request is going to go from here to here, and the user will be authenticated. But what if the user is part of on-premises Active Directory? How will you authenticate the user who wants to connect to Azure AD, or if they want to connect to Microsoft 365 and their account is on premises? How does this authentication work? In order to work with this authentication, you have basically three major authentication methods available to you. The first method is called as password hash synchronization. In case of password hash sync, what do? You basically have the hashes of your password. So this AD Connect basically runs a hashing algorithm and it hashes your password twice. After these passwords are hashed twice, these hashed passwords are then basically stored in your Azure Active Directory. And once you have these hash passwords stored in Azure Active Directory, this user can basically connect to your Azure Active Directory and it can basically look at those password hashes and the user can be authenticated over here itself. You don't need to go to on-premises to authenticate this user. So this is the first method. What advantage you get with this? It is the simplest method with no or very little administrative overhead. You don't have to configure too many tools for this. The second authentication option available to you is a PTA agent. What is a PTA agent? PTA agent is a lightweight agent available to you. This agent can help you to authenticate your users from here. It sends or relays the request to your Azure AD. Azure AD basically sends back a token to this agent, and then this token is passed on to Azure Active Directory, and that's how your users are authenticated over here. Okay, so this PT agent is a lightweight agent. You will install at least 2 agents on premises, and both of those agents will relay your request from cloud to on premises. Okay, so this is good for companies where you have a regulatory or compliance requirement that all of your authentication should be met from here. You don't want to meet the authentication requirement in cloud. You want all the authentication requests to be completed on premises. For those companies, this is a good solution. Then there is a third solution where you're syncing your users from on premises to cloud by using AD Connect, and you're authenticating the users by using ADFS server farm. So this is Active Directory Federation Services. This Active Directory Federation Services is nothing but it is a role or a feature you add in your Windows server. And once you add this feature, your users can be basically authenticated by using on-premises Active Directory. Let's look at the flow of how authentication is going to work. So your user is going to connect over here. They're going to basically write their password and username into Microsoft 365. The request will be forwarded to this ADFS proxy. This proxy is just an internet facing service which sends your request to your backend ADFS server. And from your backend ADFS server, the request will be routed to your on-premises Active Directory. And once this request is routed to your on-premises Active Directory, a token is passed. That token is then relayed back to your Azure AD, and Azure AD basically authenticates the users and the user is able to log into their account. So that's how this entire authentication works. ADFS is a good solution if you want to integrate with third-party applications, or you want to create custom claim rules, like you want that your users should be logging in from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., then this is a good solution available to you. But this has a lot of administrative overhead. So if you're a small enough company, minimum of 2 servers will be required in the ADFS server farm. And in the proxy, you will again require at least 2 servers available to you. For a large company, you might require like 16 servers in the farm, 16 server over here and 16 server over here in the ADFS server farm. So it can be a big management overhead if you configure all of this. Okay. In order for you to see this, how do you identify it is a cloud user, on-premises user, or a hybrid user? You basically go to your Azure portal, and on your Azure portal, you go to Azure Active Directory. So you go over here. Once you are in Azure Active Directory, you go to users, and within your users, you will find an option called as on-premises sync enabled. So if your user is yes over here, it means these users are synced from on-premises to cloud. But if it says no, it means either the user is a cloud identity that you have created directly on the Azure Active Directory, or the user is invited as a guest. So you can always invite guest users into your company and they're written as guest over here. So an on-premises user will be represented as on-premises sync enabled user over here. That's how you can see these details. Okay. All right. Now let's look at a quick demo on how these users are synced to cloud. In order for you to understand this, you can also follow along and maybe do this lab on your own. I have created a VM. Okay. So I have created a jump host, and from this jump host, I'm going to a Active Directory domain services VM. How did I create this VM? Basically, what you need to do, you need to click on add roles and features. And within adding roles and features, you need to click on next, 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 and you see this option called as, let me highlight it. I might have to go out of the screen in order for you to see this. So you see, you have to basically install this Active Directory domain services role. After you install this role, you promote this VM to a domain controller. After this VM is promoted to a domain controller, you need to basically go over here and you need to install a AD Connect tool. Where do you install this Connect tool from? So you log into your Azure portal, and from your Azure portal, you go to your Azure Active Directory. And within your Azure Active Directory, you'll find a section called as AD Connect. Within this AD Connect, you have two tools available to you. We can talk about comparison of this in a future video, but you have this tool called Connect Sync. On this tool, you can basically download this AD Connect tool on your local system. And once you have downloaded it, you install it. And once you have downloaded it and you have installed it, you'll see that you are going to connect your Active Directory, click on next, and you complete this entire process. Look at what users or OUs you want to sync. And once you complete all the operations, it will basically configure password hash sync for you, or it will configure some other sync based on the option that you have chosen. Once you complete this process, basically your users will be synced from on-premises to cloud. So you add Active Directory, you add AD Connect, and then you start syncing your users from on-premises to cloud. Just to give you some architectural perspective on this. So if for some reason your users are in this domain, so your domain name is, let's say, tailwind.local. These domains are not routable. So these are not publicly routable. If you have such a domain name, what you need to do, you need to make it routable. How do you make it routable? So you need to go to an area called as domains and trust. Active Directory domains and trust. And within this Active Directory domains and trust, you basically need to go to properties. And within properties, you have to add a custom domain over here or a routable domain. So if I show you this, if I highlight this, so you see, this is a routable domain that I've added. So I've changed from tailwind.local to tailwind.com. And similarly, I'll go back to my users. Whatever users I've created on premises. So if you see, I've created quite a few users. If I go to my users, I'll create or add the users in such a way that these users also don't have a non-routable domain name. So I have to remove the non-routable domain name. So I have to change it from tailwind.local to tailwind.com. Okay, that's what I need to do for all the users. Now, let's say you've done this and you've completed this. Still, you might have some issues on your on-premises Active Directory. There is actually a great tool called ID Fix. This tool can also help you to improve the overall structure of your on-premises Active Directory. So if you go to this page, you just search for ID Fix and you download this tool. After you have downloaded this tool from this page, you'll see such a tool available to you. On this tool, you can run a query of your own. And once you run this query, it'll show you all the problematic users. So it is showing me 3 errors over here. So let me just zoom into it. Otherwise, you'll not be able to see it clearly. But basically, if you see this tool, you have 3 problematic users. In one of the user, there are special characters available to me. So what I need to do, I can either edit it and change this user property. I can also remove the non-routable domain name from this problematic user over here. And one of the users that I have, they have a blank display name. It shows me all the issues that I have in my on-premises Active Directory. I'll remediate those issues. And once I'm done remediating it, usually I'll remediate it by using PowerShell, but you can also remediate it from here. So you can edit it and you can basically import or export this data as well. So once you have remediated these issues, you'll start syncing your users from on-premises to cloud. So that's all the things that you need to think of whenever you're creating a hybrid identity. That's all for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video.